back into the Lend Now framework, and we are going to focus on the L today. So we are setting you up so that you are legally compliant and so that you are protecting yourself and your assets. Now, there's several components here, but we're going to start with just your structure, right? So it's very tempting to just make loans from your savings account without any barrier between your personal assets and your lending. Now, I don't advise you to do that. I advise you to create an entity. It doesn't need to be complicated. You don't need to pay anyone for it. Just go to your Secretary of State, whatever state you're in, create, whatever entity you'd like, an LLC, it can be a corporation. I think that's going to be more of a question for your tax person. But either way, you can create an LLC or a corporation so that you can have your lending operations run out of an entity. Now, the main reason for this is to create a barrier between you and your personal assets and your lending operations. Now, you're gonna have to operate it like a real business because it is a real business. So make sure you get an EIN number. This is free to apply for. And make sure you have a business bank account. Now, that's gonna be like the foundational things you need to do for the entity. So set up the entity, LLC, corporation, get an EIN, business bank account. Now, you're also gonna eventually have an operating agreement. This is something that you can have an attorney draft for you. I'm sure there's templates online, but you're also gonna make an operating agreement for your lending business. Now, on the actual lending side, you're gonna need to set up some legal documents. So depending on the state you're in, you'll have to do some research to see what's required here. So first of all, make sure you understand the usury laws in the state in which you're operating. So that's USURY, usury laws, and make sure you understand the foreclosure laws if you're going to be lending in the real estate space. So these are two things that you should look up for the state you're in. But aside from that, you're going to want to get some legal documents drafted. Now, at a minimum, you're going to want a promissory note, a security agreement, probably a personal guarantee as well. A lot of these documents you can find as templates online for free. So you don't necessarily need to pay someone to do this for you at the beginning, but it really just depends on your level of risk tolerance. Like if you are very concerned and you're very risk averse and you're like, I want the most protection possible, then you can feel free to pay an attorney to draft state specific documents for you and your operations. It's not necessary, but you can do that. So that's the legal protection in terms of just documentation between you and the borrower. Another thing to think about is, are you lending to entities only or are you lending to individuals? Now, this is an important question to ask yourself because if you're lending to individuals, certain laws will apply to you that don't necessarily apply if you're only lending to entities. So it'll make your lending operations a bit more complicated, which is why I personally only lend to entities, meaning people who are running a business, and I only really lend for business purposes, right? So I'm not giving, Nancy a loan just because she wants to go buy a Birkin bag. Like that's not the type of loans that I do, right? I lend to legitimate businesses. Specifically, I only lend to fix and flippers and general contractors. So that is my way of mitigating and managing my own risk, but you'll have to decide what's comfortable for you. Everyone has a different risk threshold. So today, just to give you an overview, a summary, we focus on the L in the Lend Now framework, and that L is about your legal protection and setup. So we talked about setting up an entity to serve as a barrier between you and the borrower. We talked about drafting legal documents to make sure that everything is written down and that you're protected and that everyone involved in the transaction understands what exactly was given and for what purpose. So those are two pieces of the legal setup that are, I would say, the most important. So take some time. It'll probably take you a few days to get those things set up, but don't wait. Do it ASAP.